How you doing, guys? Today we are starting to dig my RJ59 out of the shed. As you can see, I got most of the tractor, all the tractors actually, out of the shed. My 57 RJ is right there, You guys know the rug, the little mule. I have my hood here that I finished, what, 2 years ago for my senior. It was sitting on top of the little mule, so that's out right there. The RJ35 from the prior videos just recently, the 56, it's still here. That'll be getting picked up shortly. And then right here we have my RJ59. Now, the tire fell off the rim a while ago, a couple years ago, so that's the reason for the blocks. But I got an extra rim here I'm just going to throw on just so we can get it out of the garage, out of the shed and into my garage. So let's get to it. All right, got everything back in the shed, or everything that I'm going to put back in the shed. So this RJ35 will be gone in a few weeks, or maybe a little bit longer, whatever, it doesn't matter. But that is in front just so we can get it out. Rug is ready for the season. The little mule will get pulled out soon enough, and my 57 RJ35 is there in the back. Hood's in there. All right, let's get to the garage and let's look over the 59. All right, so this is the point in time in the video where I have to come clean. I was having a major league issue trying to get this thing started, to the point where I kind of stopped making little video clips because it was getting pretty frustrating. And the reason it was getting frustrating is I have no idea why it's not starting. So there was a couple issues that I have kind of thought about and then hopefully rectified. One is the spark was weak coming out of the ignition system. So what I did is I went ahead and just got a new condenser online, and I got a new set of points. It does have a type 2 ignition, so it takes a standard Tecumseh H60 point set, 30547A. You've seen me use these multiple times in the past. Also, this is kind of interesting. This is a Philco condenser. The Philco number is PH62 or PH62. I can't recall what the actual Clinton number is, but I have it in a book. I'll dig it up somewhere. So I got two new parts for the ignition system. I did test the coil with my ohm meter. It checked out fine. I did go and get a new spark plug, gapped it to 25. And then the other thing I did, because this is just what I do, this is the original LMG carburetor that was on the engine. I did throw a kit on it. I set it all up according to the Clinton manual, and for whatever reason, it was just flooding. So I'm going to keep it, original Clinton carb for the 59. If I ever do sell the tractor, somebody wants the carburetor, they can have the carburetor. But in the meantime, back to the scheduled program, I did put one of my domed early style Carter N carburetors on this, which this is the carburetor that I use to start all my engines up on an initial break-in. So in theory, this thing should start right up. I just have this. I'm going to clean up the, oops, there it is. I'm going to clean up the contact for the spark plug. But let's go ahead and dig into this ignition system. All right, I have the Carter N all loosely assembled. We have the bowl in place. The float is in place. I replaced the bowl with an NOS bowl that I had downstairs because this one's all kind of dinged up and dented, and I didn't want to use it. So the float is parallel. The top edge of the float is parallel to the base of the carburetor, just like we set up the LMG one, just like I set up all the other Carter Ns. I did install the idle needle and the fast idle needle. Taking a look at the book, Carter float type carburetors, It says initial adjustment for the idle fuel adjustment needle is 1 turn open. Initial adjustment for the high-speed needle is 1.5 turns open. I'm going to go ahead and set those needles, and then we'll talk about how we're going to mount this carburetor on the Clinton motor. Now, there was a comment a while back, like how do you do that? You know, how can it be done? And I'll show you in just 1 second. But what you'll find is there's really nothing special on getting a Carter N from a Kohler onto a Clinton. I think the easiest way to show you that you can swap a Carter N carburetor from a Kohler engine to a Clinton motor is to kind of do this on the workbench, because with the hood in the way, it's going to be a weird angle, but essentially this is how it's done. As you can see, if we look at the top of the carburetors, this is the LMG from the Clinton. This is a Carter N from a Kohler. Okay, you can see that the actual throttle arms are essentially the same. In other words, they're about the same length, and they're in the this is set to idle, that's set to idle. You can see that the angle of the arms are essentially the same. There would be a little bit of difference in the angle of the arm based on where the idle screw is set. So obviously maybe this one, maybe with this carburetor, it needs a little bit more air flow. So this might be just a hair, you know, in a different position, but essentially they're the same. You can use the stock Clinton link from the governor arm to the throttle plate. So don't need to change any of that. That all just swaps right in. The bolts, the mounting bolts are in the same spot. You can use the Clinton gasket, just put it right on the motor. When it comes to the chokes, obviously there's a little bit of a difference. This choke moves in this linear direction, while this is more of a flip lever up and down. A little bit different, but nothing, you know, nothing too major. The inlets for the fuel are exactly the same positions. They also use the same fitting. So I'll take this fitting out of this carburetor and put it in that carburetor. When you're looking to attach the Clinton air cleaner, which is right there, that thing with the elbow, the mounting surfaces are exactly the same. Bolts are the same distance apart. As you can see, they both use the same pitch thread screw. So that's all set. And you can even reuse the Clinton air filter, I guess, elbow gasket. You know, it's not a super direct fit perfect, but you know what? It works, and it makes it fairly simple. So really, at the end of the day, swapping a Carter N onto a Clinton is not that hard. You just need to make sure that you're pulling the Carter N carburetor off a K90 or a K91 with a basic setup. And what I mean by that, there isn't a spec option that, you know, the carburetor had to be a special carburetor for just that motor. But the run-of-the-mill K90s with a 3/4 inch PTO shaft, okay, the standard bread and butter K90, K91s, they came with Carter N carburetors, and they come right off. And that even goes for the later model styles, okay? Again, I'm just randomly pulling. This is a later model with the bigger bowl. If we take a look, it's all about the same. So you can do it fairly easy and get rid of the LMG carburetor. All right. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get this thing all installed on the motor, and then we'll turn our attention to the gas tank. All right, the Carter N is installed, and as you can see, the stock link is right there, the Clinton link. We have the little retainer spring. I think the link is upside down, but it works. When I go ahead and actuate the throttle, it goes right to idle. Everything's all hooked up, so we're good there. The choke works fine. So I am going to have to disconnect this bolt, this bolt right here, when I take the blower cover off, because we're going to need to get into the points. But for right now, next up, we're going to put the gas tank and the fuel line back on. Pretty simple here. I'm just going to take the little valve right there and just put a little bit of sealer on the threads and then just screw it in fairly snugly tight in the into the tank, and have it pointed towards this direction, towards the this end of the tank, because it actually sits in this position on the tractor. So in other words, fill here, it needs to exit in that direction. One thing I thought I would show you is how minty clean inside this tank is. I mean, I would be so bold to say this is probably one of the nicest RJ tanks on planet Earth. Real lucky about that, because some of these can be a real grotesque mess. So let's go ahead, let's get that valve in, let's get the fuel line cut and put together, and the fuel system, in theory, is done. Fuel line is all installed, and as you can see, to me it's just a cleaner look. It's just cleaner, it's simple. Get rid of that stupid glass bowl that just, they all leak, or they obviously mine didn't shut off. I do have to push that fuel line down a little bit, but other than that, it's nice and clean. You just put a Briggs & Stratton style fuel filter in there. I got a red one. It goes right in. All right, I'm not gonna put the air cleaner on until I get it started, because sometimes you have to spray a little bit of starting fluid in it just to fire it off, but it's easier without that there. So I'll hold off on that. I am going to go ahead and swap the tire, take this RJ 35 tire off, or rim and tire off, and put the original rim and tire back on it. And I'll take apart the blower cover, get the flywheel off so we can get to the ignition. Okay, so this is the Type 2 ignition on a B1290. We have the coil, ignition wire, condensers right here, and the points is inside this little housing right here. To get to the points, there's like a little spring clip here. You just take a screwdriver, gently pry up. The spring clip will come off, let that swing down. You can pull the cover off. There is a gasket involved. This cover is actually 20 thousandths thickness and can be used as the points gap tool. So, you know, kind of a neat little thing about Clinton. The H60 points are right here. And to test the coil, a couple things. One, give your coil a squeeze. If it's squishy or like any kind of pliable, you know, any kind of squishiness, the coil is no good. To test the wire, to make sure you have full continuity from the end of the wire to the actual spark plug, get your ohm meter. Just put it on resistance. It should, you know, when you touch the two pieces together, it should get 0, which we do. Take one probe, touch the end of the wire. Take the other probe, touch the end of the wire itself. Oh, I got my hand in the way, but if you look, it registers 0 on the meter, so we know we have full continuity within the spark plug wire. So that way you know it's going to go right from the coil to the spark plug. Then to test the coil, Clinton coil should be about 5 ohms. So again, if I go ahead and grab the ignition wire lug here, okay, I'm going to try, and you just, one wire goes to the condenser, one wire of the coil goes to your kill switch. So you could pick either one. If I touch it right there, whoopsies, come on. Yeah, 5, just over 5 ohms. You could even go so bold to touch the bottom here, 5, 6. So I know that the windings within the coil are good, okay? As well as the resistance level for a Clinton coil is about 5 ohms. It comes out right about 5 ohms. A Kohler coil will be closer to 7 ohms that I find. So I'm going to say that the coil, the Clinton coil, is fine. Let's go ahead and remove the condenser and let's get the points out of the motor. With everything all kind of taken apart here, it might look like a nest of wires, but there's a couple little interesting things here. I pulled the screw that holds the condenser in, screws right into the base plate right back there, and this is there's the screw right there. So that came undone. One of the ground wire for the coil actually goes to that bolt, so we'll have to return that. Then there's a couple nuts right here that hold a bunch of wires to the base of the points, okay? One wire is our kill switch, which is right there, okay? That's what that is. It also holds the other wire coming from the coil, as well as the wire coming from the condenser. But as you can see how these things are connected? You know, this wire and the condenser wire are actually married together with this brass crimp connector. That leads me to believe that this is the original condenser and original coil to this motor. So probably the weak spark that I'm seeing is probably coming from this condenser. So replacing it is probably not a bad thing. I do remember I did replace these points at some point in time, but I don't believe I replaced this condenser. So we're going to go ahead, separate this from the coil wire, and get the new condenser put in place. As we've seen with other Clinton motor tune-ups, there is a cam that goes on the crankshaft like this. It actually is the cam lobe for the points, so they open and close. I just went ahead and cleaned it, made sure there was no cracks or anything like that in it. Seems to be in good shape. There, if you look at the keyway, there's like a step side, and then there's just a flat flush side. The step side goes in towards the motor or towards the bearing plate. Just go ahead, slide it, and then just very gently push it into place. It gets keyed in by the slot on the crankshaft. Just make sure you have your little felt pad in place. That's kind of like the wiper and keeps the points cam clean while the engine is spinning. Went ahead, mounted the new condenser in. The ground wire has been put in. I just need to tighten it up. I have all the other wires disconnected because I got to get the new set of points in and gapped, and then I can tighten all of the wire. Or I can put the wiring on, then gap the points. It's here nor there. Sometimes this could be seen as a little bit difficult, but it really isn't. With your points cam in place, rotate the engine so the points cam and the points arm itself are at the highest point or the thickest point of the points cam. That's where full open on the points will be created. Next, go ahead and put your screw in, tighten it down just so it's very snug. Take your gapping tool, put it between the points, and then using this little notch right here, where is it? There it is. This little notch and a screwdriver, gently push this side of the points towards your feeler gauge until it just touches, okay? Because you don't want to lift this arm off the points cam. Go ahead, tighten down the screw. You don't have to send it home with 350 foot-pounds. You just tighten it down to, make it snug, and then just give it a little touch. And what you should end up with, and I'm going to try to do this with one hand, is you should be able to put your feeler gauge in and just feel just a little bit of resistance like that. You can't feel it, but there is just a little bit of resistance. So that's 20 thousandths. And that's it. I'm going to go ahead, check the screw make sure it's tight. I'm going to go ahead and attach all 3 wires to this bottom lug of the points. That would be the kill wire, that would be the condenser wire, and that would be the coil wire. All get hooked up right to this lug. Tighten it down, put the cover on, and I can go ahead and reinstall the flywheel. The flywheel nut is torqued to 400 to 450 inch-pounds and or 33 foot-pounds. Just make sure to torque in multiple stages up to the maximum required torque. And with that, my 1959 RJ is ready for the Wheel Horse Show. I do have to do a little carb adjustment here and there. It, you know, farts and pops a little bit, but nothing big. Overall, the non-start, we've addressed that and fixed it, so I'm super happy with that. That just needed a couple ignition parts. I think that condenser is what went bad. Also, the carburetor, going to a Carter N, for me personally, is just easier. I mean, like I said, I'll keep the original carburetor for the engine, but overall, runs really good. Can't complain. Like I said, just a little bit more carb adjustment, but essentially this thing is ready for the Wheel Horse Show. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope me showing you how to fix up a B1290 Clinton ignition system and how to convert from an LMG carburetor to a Carter N carburetor. You found that interesting. And if you did, if you could please do me a huge favor, like, share, subscribe. Please leave a comment below and ring the bell if you would be so kind, so that way when I put up some more mildly amusing content, you'll know when. All right, guys, until the next project, you have a wonderful day.